Okay, hello everyone. I'm here again with my mentor Lisa, and we're talking about the second video focusing on the three standards. So the lesson was yesterday was with my grade 2 class, and we were talking about digital citizenship and their digital trail. So in reference to the three standards, I think that in particular, I was happy with the learning environment. I think I have a very welcoming classroom. My routine of welcoming the children and calling them by name as they come in the room, I think is good. I like to switch it up from time to time where they're sitting and how the layout works. And if you see in this video, I actually borrowed some cushions from early childhood so that because we had more of a discussion class to just kind of keep us in the front, and it was a smaller class because several students were absent. So yeah, learning environment, I think I was pretty happy with how that worked. Learning differences, standard number 2. In a discussion group, I think that there's definitely some students more eager to share than others. I tried to be mindful of some of the students that maybe had some really good ideas, but were a little bit more reluctant to call on them. Also to have different ways of students being able to give me feedback, whether it is speaking or, doing the thumbs up, thumbs down, or doing the more formal kind of assessment with the handout that we had at the end there. And then learner development that we've already looked at last week. I think this is a very appropriate topic for the students that we're working on. I think it is very age appropriate. The materials that we use, the kind of the little scavenger hunt following the trail game, they really seem to take well too. And the video, which I can include the link to of that I showed in the class, I think is very age appropriate for that age 7 or 8 years old. So yeah, Lisa, let's hear the good and the bad and see what you have to say about, yeah, Lisa was actually in the room this time. So
all right.
What kind of feedback you have for me on this lesson?
Sure. So never good and bad, always areas of growth.
Right.
And next steps.
I
and think that you did
You're
well
right.
for sure.
You're right.
For sure. So I agreed. I thought there was a lot of there was many things that you did really well. I thought it was a really engaging lesson. I really liked the activity of the trail and where how you organize that, where they to get that idea of a trail that they had to do it. I think with that age group, it's really appropriate because it's so kinesthetic, right? As well. And the video was really appropriate as well. And it was a really engaging, well-planned lesson. And I think it really identified what you were trying to get across in terms of the personal and private information as well. One thing that I did, and it's something that we talked about before, right? In terms of when you have the class and they're sitting in the front, right? I noticed that, do you think that all students were 100% on task and answering as they should have? Or did you see any that were
it's hard to say. There were definitely some that were distracted. I think that changing up the environment where they're sitting on the pillows on the floor was, I think, good for some of them, but then it was a distraction for others. You can definitely see in the video at one point, Adam had the pillow on his head so that I just kind of took it away from him, trying to redirect their attention up front when it needs to be. So I think that's definitely a challenge with that age group to keep their attention. I think the lesson content, is as exciting as you try and make digital citizenship. It's never going to be as exciting as working with robots or doing the coding stuff on their iPad. So yeah, that's definitely an area that I think could be improved. Do you have any specific suggestions on what I could do?
Sure. So one thing that I was thinking, I think the pillows were a nice idea. The cushions are a nice idea, and I think they can definitely work. I think what you need to do is set expectations.
Oh, okay.
Right. So remember when we think about the responsive classroom and they talk about interactive modeling, right? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I think just taking, if you're going to introduce a new seating arrangement, or you're going to introduce something new in the class,
Mhm.
a new environment, I think it's important to reestablish those expectations for how they might be used, right? And so what are some ways do you think you might do that?
So yeah, I think focused quite on the video and the task and wanting to show a specific way of being flexible in the learning environment. I think I maybe didn't establish those norms as well as I could have, because it was the first time the students had that in my classroom, and I think it was neat, but it was also something different that maybe was yeah, they do have that kind of arrangement in some other classes, but I think, yeah, taking just 30 seconds to say, okay, we're going to sit nicely on these cushions. We're not using them as hats or, throwing them around or doing anything like that, just as a reminder. I think some of the students might still act out a little bit, but yeah, you're right. That would be a good thing. And it's funny you say that, because I taught the same lesson 2 periods later to Danielle's class, and learning what happened in the first class. That was actually one of the first things I did in the second class. So
Perfect.
maybe next week I'll have you see the second class, where I actually I get a chance to run through and see what worked and what didn't, and then tweak it a little bit. So
no, I think like I said, I thought the lesson was wonderful. I thought you did a really good job, and it's so hard, especially when you're being filmed and under pressure, to remember everything.
Yeah.
But I think with that age group, the most important thing is to not feel bad that you take extra time to establish your classroom routine and expectations, right? Because especially for those guys, they have a lot of energy in classroom, and interactive modeling would be a really, really important thing to always do, right? So who can I see in the classroom that's showing me what a quiet body looks like? Who can show me what it looks like to sit on this cushion appropriately, right? Let's all look at so-and-so, right? Who sit Isabella, for example, who sat there like that the whole time, right?
Yes.
So let's all look at Isabella and let's look at what she's doing with her body. Can we all follow that, right? And then moving forward from that. And then not being afraid if they're not gonna, these are the expectations. If you want to sit on the cushion, if you're not going to follow the expectations, thank you. Right.
No cushion.
Yeah, as well, just so that they ensure, right, that they're ready to learn, because they were excited.
Okay.
And also, I think be firm in your establishing of that they need to put up their hand to speak, right? Again, a respectful environment is one where everybody takes turns and we pause and we wait for other people to finish their thoughts before we share ours, right? So using that language to really ensure that your discussions are always engaging in that way, right? But I think though, in terms of, again, the learning environment, when we think about the standards, I think, you do a really good job of creating that. Again, the greeting at the door is really nice, right? And you have again, the multiple, you really spend a lot of time thinking about the different ways that you're going to sort of create the environment through the lesson as well. And the topics are really relevant too. And then the learning differences. So talk to me about the learning differences, and because I noticed one of the things that you did was really well. You really highlighted the vocabulary, right, and focused on the vocabulary in the beginning, so that people could understand, especially maybe those with ELL needs or.
Yes. So I think, with learning differences, like you said, I did highlight those vocab words. We did take a couple of minutes at the beginning. I had them written on the whiteboard. They also came up in the movie and in the slides that I was using. We discussed them. And also something that I turned on during the movie was the closed captioning, so that you have both the, listening and reading while it's going on. And I think, in that class in particular, I think that there are maybe a few slower learners, but I don't think there's anybody who has too much trouble with English itself.
Sure.
So
doing an activity like that, if you have some learners that are slower, what might a strategy be that you could put in for them, to help support them completing their work?
So
did you, and I actually forgot to ask you to bring the work. So one thing that we'll do next time is if you complete an assignment, let's look at it together.
Oh, okay.
So then we can judge who met the learning outcome and
Who
who
met
didn't,
it
and then
who
we
did
can
not.
look at it.
Right, right.
Yeah, in that way.
Right. So something I like to do, sometimes I collect the papers, but also sometimes I like to send them home because I have actually heard from some parents that those papers also tend to spark some discussions at home when the parents say,
Sure.
hey, what is this that you learned about? And the students can hopefully recite, the things that we learned about, the topics, the concepts and things like that, which is, I think, a good thing. But back to your first question, it's really just making sure they have access to that information in different ways, in reading it more than once, in hearing it, both from me, also in the small group discussions of maybe speaking about something with other students. So it's just making sure that those topics and those concepts are done in different ways to see that hopefully one of them will work well with the students. And then also having those very informal assessments, the thumbs up, thumbs down, or maybe when the students were working on the papers, myself going around and checking in with the individual students or groups and seeing, oh, did you understand this? Or, oh, I don't know how to do number 2. Well, okay, this is what we talked about, and this is what the question means. And so just trying to be as mindful as possible to, what the students have and have not understood.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Also using a learning partner. If you're handing out an assignment of that sort and like matching 2 students so that they can have a discussion and do it together, can also create, give some support for those students that need a little extra push.
So the specific
So,
groupings.
yeah.
Yeah, we did a whole unit about like the homogeneous and heterogeneous groupings and how different benefits and such for that. So yeah, that could be a very good specific thing for the grouping as well.
Yeah, just when they're working on an assignment. So then they have someone to talk to, they have someone, and they can come bounce ideas off of and they can complete it together as well. I mean, some things you want them to do independently because you want to understand what each of them do know, right? But if it's like a starter lesson, then you can also do the flexible groupings, right? And put these two together, and really intentionally, right? To support learning in the class. But I thought the things that you thought of were good. I mean, you can't ever think of everything all at once, right?
I'm trying, but it's tricky.
For sure.
Yes.
So if we go back to the rubric, where would you, if you were going to self-assess yourself, where would you self-assess yourself in relation to the rubrics? So if we look at standard 1, learner development.
I would probably put myself as proficient. I mean, I've seen some lessons both in what we've been watching in school and watching some other teachers here who, of course, have been at this a lot longer than I have. And I think that there's still a lot of room for growth. There's still some of these things that we're talking about, like, did you think of this? Did you think of that? I think will start to come more naturally as you're doing it more often. So I wouldn't put myself as outstanding yet, but I would put myself hopefully at proficient, both for the first and second. Let's see here. Positive classroom environment. I think that's most certainly proficient as well. Climate of mutual respect. So maybe that's somewhere I can work on with the making sure that we're setting the expectations with the raising the hand and all of that and the body listening, which I think is definitely there, but could be improved upon. Learning differences. We spoke about that. And then I think
environments was the third.
I think I'm pretty satisfied with my learning environment as well. Again, I would say that would probably be proficient as well.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Great. Yes, but thank you very much. Anything else to add? No. That's it for today.
Like I said, I thought you did a really good job. I thought I really enjoyed the lesson. I enjoyed the experience, and I thought you put a lot of time and effort and thought into it. And I think that the kids were really engaged. When you think about digital citizenship, sometimes it's like, oh, it's like it'd be like a lecture or this, but it was really age appropriate for them.
Yes.
In terms of what they were going to understand as well.
Yes.
Definitely. Actually, the one thing I did think about, and this is just again, going back to that lesson structure. Remember I said to you about the ending, right?
The
So
planning
I
at the
think
end,
when
yeah.
we're like, when you think about planning a lesson, always be having a beginning, middle, and end, essentially, right? And your beginning, when you start, always be looking at your objective, right? And then tuning into that objective, like taking 1 or 2 minutes to tune into that objective, right? And see what they know or understand about that objective. And then of course, the end, coming back to that objective, right? This is what we were doing today, because it was like personal and private. What's the difference between personal and private information, right? And I think you really went into the vocabulary, right? But I think we could have taken maybe just like a couple more seconds to see what they knew about the personal and private in the beginning, right?
Okay.
And establish that, and then circle around back to it.
Got it.
So like
Got
your learning objective is like always your starting point, right?
Okay.
For those kiddos as well. But other than that, I thought you did
All
a
right.
really great job. I thought it was good.
Good.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Bye, everyone.